Dann darf ich jetzt noch mal ganz offiziell und auch alle auf Facebook.
Let's start officially. Welcome all of you who have joined us on Zoom Live and on Facebook to QZM Meets. I greet our guests and honorary guests. On behalf of the city of Mannheim, the mayor Dirk Grunert, and for the Communities House in Haifa, Arnon Allouche. He is heading the center, and he will answer our questions today. He is accompanied by two youngsters from the community house, by Asaf and Yahav. Welcome. On behalf of the QZM, I greet Vanessa Kinzebach. She will be moderating the talk with Arnon Allouche. And on behalf of the city of Mannheim, I greet David Linse, heading the Department International Affairs, Europe and Protocol, and Sören Landmann and Margret Good, both commissioners for equal opportunities for people with diverse and sexual and gender identities. I greet also the members of the City Council and our two interpreters, Antje Eiger in Tel Aviv and Dina Hertz in Jerusalem. And of course, our technician, Tevfik Sebike. Welcome. Likewise, I greet all the representatives of the media and all who are interested in Haifa, Mannheim, and from other places in our event and watch our event. Welcome to all of you. Before we start, I thank the various departments who have supported us in terms of organization and finance. David Linse, heading the Department International Affairs, and Jana Gabrecht, who supported us significantly. I thank also Sören Landmann and Margret Good, the two commissioners. Before we start, let me refer to how we came into being QZM meeting. Last spring, the Boston Consulting Group, who is accompanying our center during its establishment, they conducted a research as to queer centers in Germany. They conducted surveys, interviews, and we plan to visit Darmstadt, not far from Mannheim. There's a queer center, Vielbund, colorful. We wanted to visit this center in spring, but we could not do so due to the outbreak of the corona pandemic, and we converted the idea onto a digital platform, and that's how we are. That's how it came that we are here. We have had already 4 meetings with 4 different centers in Germany, and today's event is the first international one. And I'd like to first show you where we are. At the moment, we are in Mannheim, and we take a leap of more than 3,000 kilometers to Israel, to the north of Israel, to Haifa. Haifa is situated at the Mediterranean, has 280,000 inhabitants, third largest city of Israel, about 100 kilometers from Tel Aviv. And we greet the Communities House for Pride and Tolerance, which has opened its doors since 2017 for the queer communities of Haifa and surroundings. I soon will pass on the microphone to Vanessa Kinzebach. She will be moderating the talk, 1-hour talk with Arnon Allouche. And after this, we have a Q&A session. You all are invited to participate. But before we do so, I pass the microphone to our Mayor Grunert. He will greet us on behalf of the city of Mannheim. Yes, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear fellow citizens, dear guests, from the Community's House of Pride and Tolerance, and dear active members of the QZM, I greet you very warmly, also on behalf of the Lord Mayor of Mannheim, Dr. Peter Kurz, and members of the City Council. Part of you are present. Even though I don't see all of you, special thanks to the team of the Queer Center QZM for inviting us to the event. Many thanks also to Arnon Allouche, who is heading the Community's House in Haifa, for his participation and interest in the exchange. Thank you, of course, to all the departments of the municipal administration and the commissioners, and also special thanks to the Department of International Affairs. Thank you to all who support this beautiful event. Mannheim is a colorful and diverse city. Commitment, a cosmopolitan and solidarity-based cooperation are lived and promoted in Mannheim. This is also reflected in the Mannheim 2030 mission statement, and as well in the international cooperation with 13 Mannheim twin cities and friendship cities. The diversity of sexual and gender identities is understood as a fundamental and enriching aspect of the city of Mannheim. A visible sign of this is the membership in the Rainbow Cities Network and the creation of the LGBTI commissioners, both since 2015. We were one of the first in the state of Baden-Württemberg, and this position has been enlarged lately. Our vision: we live equal opportunities and active participation of all. This is one of our basic values, and this is reflected also by the Mannheim Alliance for Coexistence and Diversity. The Mannheim Alliance brings together institutions, and they work together against discrimination. Very different organizations organize mutual events to get to know one another better and work together. International networking are of utmost importance. They strengthen all partners. And Mannheim is an active partner in the Rainbow Cities Network, as I said. The aim is to combat discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity at the local level, and to promote acceptance of sexual and gender diversity. The city of Mannheim focuses on the 17 sustainability goals of the United Nations. They also advocate inclusion and diversity. In international cooperation, the city of Mannheim is committed to the goals of international organizations such as the Council of Europe. Our international cooperation ensures human rights of each and every citizen. This explicitly includes the rights of the LGBTI community. Exchange includes, of course, the exchange of LGBTI organizations. This is important to us. In the past, we had several exchange programs, twice an exchange of young members from Mannheim who met people from Bydgoszcz, Poland, and Haifa. And I had the possibility, I was able to participate at the time in Haifa. We were impressed by the beauty of Haifa, no question, but we focused on exchange. on overcoming racism within the community and the cooperation between NGOs and the city administration. International exchange showed us how important this is. Our guest, Arnon Allouche, knows the city of Mannheim and its LGBTI work. In 2007, he visited the city of Mannheim, and together with the CSD Rhein-Mecca, we had a project, representatives of lesbians, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex groups from our partner cities were invited to the CSD, and the motto was Twin Cities Together for Equality. From Haifa, Arnon Allouche and Yoav Zaritsky, co-founder of the Haifa Rainbow Association, took part. I've said it already. The city of Mannheim values the cooperation with the queer community. We want to be a reliable partner for this community. LGBTI people are a natural and valued part of the urban society, from school, work life to football clubs or sport clubs. On our way to get there, we had an interesting, we introduced a planning, or we asked the public to conceive projects within the city budget of 2019. The QZM won by far, and they received 3,000 euro initial funding, which are to be spent in 2020-21 in order to establish the center. This, of course, is not easy due to the restrictions of the pandemic, but people were successful and the volunteers were effective. They had a variety of workshops, various locations were examined, and they founded an association. There was great success. And the series we take part in aims at learning from one another, an excellent idea. There have been contacts with other queer centers, and there has been an exchange, but I'm happy that this is an exchange between the QZM and the Community's House for Pride and Tolerance in Haifa, that this exchange has become international, and I'd like to thank all of you. We thank the QZM and the Community's House in Haifa for their precious work, and all those who are involved voluntarily. And I wish the QZM all the best for the year 2021, and we hope that the opening of the Queer Center can be celebrated, maybe even in physical presence. And I hope also for good international exchange with Mannheim and Haifa, also face to face. And I wish all of us an interesting evening. Thank you, Dirk Grunert. We all want to meet face to face again. I now pass on the mic to Vanessa Kinzebach. She will be moderating the talk with Arnon Allouche. We have about 1 hour, and afterwards we have an open Q&A session, and I enjoy. Please, Vanessa. Hello to all of you. I join in and am happy to be part of this event tonight. I think this will be a beautiful event, something to myself. I am a mom in a rainbow family, And via Ilse Rhein-Neckar, I'm part of the community in Mannheim. Ilse Rhein-Neckar is the initiative of lesbian and gay parents, and since 11 years, this initiative enables the exchange between rainbow families. We experience things together, and we receive information on social and legal matters of rainbow families. Under the roof of the LSVD, which is the National Association of Lesbians and Gay in Germany, we also work politically and fight for social and legal recognition of rainbow families. On top of this, I'm engaged, even though in the background in the work of the QZM, and since July, I'm conducting these QZM talks. On top of it, I study social works at the University of Ludwigsburg. I'm writing my MA thesis, and I also have a scientific interest in queer centers, because this is the topic of my thesis, and I'm conducting research on this topic. As to the content of tonight, we have three aspects. We want to learn about the history of the community's house in Haifa. Second, to hear topical stories, hear about the work they do today, and then look into the future, dare to look into the future, and ask Arnon about possible future stories. I conducted 2 preliminary talks with Arnon, and I was quite surprised as to the similarities of the communities in Mannheim and Haifa. But on top of it, I learned that you have your own very special history. And I'd like to hear more about it. What was the reason to establish this community's house in Haifa, and what has been the process? Arnon, I'll pass the microphone to you. Good evening to all of you. I'm very happy and very excited to be part of this event. As you said, I have visited Mannheim 3 years ago within the framework of a partnership Twin City meeting. It was a meeting which shaped me, had huge impact on me. Haifa is not Tel Aviv. In terms of Israel, Haifa might be the 3rd largest city, but for the gay community, Haifa is periphery. And to visit Mannheim, to be exposed to the world, also later on in the United States, that was a very moving and important experience. A short anecdote: when we visited you in Mannheim, when we said, wow, they don't have a gay center. They are so advanced. But today in Tel Aviv, we see Tel Aviv might be the city with the highest percentage of the gay communities, gay organizations, gay activities. In the 90s, 2000, there were lots of coffee shops, pubs founded in Tel Aviv, especially for the community, but they've vanished. They are no longer needed because Tel Aviv has become an inclusive city. When we came to Mannheim, we said they must be so advanced that they do not need a center, and then we got the invitation, and I understood that this was a misconception. But when I visited you, the people who greeted us and the importance of the meeting of 6 twin cities misled me. I could not believe that you are past finding a gay center. That you are before establishing a gay center. And it's an honor for me to present our activities. First of all, to myself, I'm Arnon. I soon will turn 50, and in terms of a gay person, it's like with dog years. I'm towards the end of my life. I was born in Haifa, and when they accepted me to work, they asked me, "What are you doing?" My friends asked me, and I said, "The city of Haifa pays me for being a gay." But that was my feeling. To get a salary for representing something which I was busy hiding for so many years. This was the ultimate outing. They asked me to be myself, and for years I didn't allow myself to be what I am. And this was a moment of wow. I studied pedagogics. I'm an educational counselor, but I always wanted to be a therapist, and I'm doing my studies now in psychotherapy. And 10 years ago, I was heading for 1 year a small community center, and I swore to myself I will never ever lead a community center like this again. And then 2 friends of mine sent me this tender, and I said, even though I should apply, because this is something I sincerely believe in, and I'm very happy that I was accepted. Vanessa asked me also about the history of the house a little bit, and I addressed the house of today and how the house, and I intentionally talk about a house, not of a center. In our logo, unfortunately, it says house instead of home. But we will correct this one day. And it's a home, indeed a home, not a house. And I'll lead you through the history until today via my presentation through pictures. 1 second, please. Here we are. As I said, I soon turn 50, and I lived most of my life in Haifa. And only 2 years after I came to the House of Communities, I realized that my city has a history of gays and queer history, which is really amazing. Usually we say everybody of the community, once they reach 18 or 17, they save money in order to move to Tel Aviv. But now I am really proud of my city and of its gay history. And I enlarged on purpose my cursor, which will lead you through my presentation. The black and white picture is a coccinelle. Maybe the senior member or members of your community know her. She was a phenomenon back then. She was the first big drug who traveled the world and who underwent surgery later on. She was turned into a transgender woman. When she came to Haifa, it was a sensation. I think it was 1969. And I don't know how you use the word coccinelle, but in Israel, this word is a cuss word. It's connoted, it's negative, it's a female gay person, but then in the trans community, until today, it's not a positively connoted word. It's an internal cuss word for trans women who are sex workers, prostitutes. And in the middle, you see Gila, the marvelous Gila. And everyone of the queer community in Israel knows her. She was the first trans and the most famous trans of Tel Aviv. Unfortunately, she died more or less a year ago, but she grew up in Haifa. She underwent surgery in Europe, came back to Israel, and we have this history project, a queer history project, which works on an exhibit, Yahav. They published an article in the newspaper. Hebrew is a gender-minded language, and in the 90s there were in the big newspapers of Israel, they didn't know how to relate to her as a woman in female or male form, and people were confused. They had problems to tell the story, and this article is posted proudly on top of my computer because this woman changed a lot. She paved the way for the trans community in Israel. She was born and grew up in Haifa, even though everybody would say she is from Tel Aviv. And this card, the Queen of Hearts, and this picture tells about the great history of the feminist movement in Israel. It started somewhere in the 70s. Women organized, most of them were lesbians, and they called themselves in the beginning Card. That's why I put the Queen of Heart on top of the picture. This picture is from 1985. It shows the demonstration on the International Women's Day, organized by the first and biggest feminist organization in Israel, called Isha Leisha, from one woman to another. And this organization is until today led by lesbian women, and this is important, and this characterizes the queer community of Haifa. It's very female and very feminist, which has an impact on the development also of the community center or House of Communities. The 90s were not so positive times. This is one of the many articles, newspaper articles. It tells the story of gay men who are murdered in the public parks of Haifa. I cannot remember this period. I was gay already, or let's say I knew my identity, but I somehow was not exposed to it. And this is an important part of the history. It tells the history of the community about times when people still had to hide in coffee shops and parks they met, but in hiding. And we shouldn't forget this period. This is something very positive to the right. It's a letter from July 1994. This letter tells about the opening of a branch of an association, the first association, the biggest association of the queer community in Israel. And this branch was opened in Haifa, in the Hadar neighborhood, where the House of Communities House is situated today. It didn't last many years, but Haifa had a period with lots of activities. I do not have time to elaborate, and I take a leap, but some were in the beginning of 2000, end of the 90s, the community received an apartment within a condominium as a present. Not, we could use it for free, let's say it this way. We were in community center. It's also an educational center by the name of Leo Beck. They had this real estate which they gave to the community so that we could work in a more structured way. And then the Haifa Forum was found. You see its logo here. And that was an organization of volunteers who worked for the community. And this is one of the first parades, gay parades in Haifa. It looks big, but there are not more than 300 participants. It's a side street in a fancy neighborhood. If you want to buy an apartment there, you have either to murder somebody or rob a bank. It's a side street because the city did not allow us to go through, to march through the major roads of the city. We had to go through the side streets so that nobody sees us. This is already a parade, 2008, organized by the same forum. It's amazing. 10, 11 gay parades we had with, at the end, 5,000 participants, organized by volunteers with no funds. They had no money. And it's not like you gay parades. You see, there is no audience. Everybody, all the 5,000 are marching. The community and its allies support us. And these two pictures talk about 2014. A little bit before 2014, the Leo Beck Institute sold the apartment, and the community had no place to meet anymore. So this is here the gay parade, and here in Hebrew we had the motto Kehila Bli Bait, a community without a house, and this is the end of the gay parade. We are standing right in front of the city hall and demand rights from the city hall. We demand a home, a house. 2015 was a complex year, between a great year and a very tough year. The picture to the right is from the gay parade in Jerusalem, and this amazing young woman was murdered by an extremist, and this event shook the whole country and the gay community, and also this person by the name of Yossi. Until this day, he was a council member, city of Haifa, a gay person, but not outed. But the next day after the murder, he went to the Lord Mayor and outed himself for the first time in front of the Lord Mayor and said, "We have to do something." The Lord Mayor said, "Don't you worry, we will take care of it." And this special combination of the fight of the activists and the communities, and a member of the community who outed himself took that step. He was part of the political force within the city council. All this led to the establishment a year later of the community's house. This picture is really moving. It tells the city of it tells the story of the city. That is the Lord Mayor who took upon himself responsibility, Yossi, who outed himself, and these two women, and or these three, they are part of the special group who fought within the city for us, and these two are heading the nationwide association I told you about, Aguda. And they dreamt about the community's house. Down here you can see how the facility looked when we received it. Not very appealing. A small apartment, 120 square meters, ground floor, in an old building, in an amazing but not easy neighborhood. And this picture is a year later, nearly a year later. We have already refurbished it, and that was our dream. It has been changed a little bit. We enlarged the kitchen, and this is important because a kitchen is very often the heart of a house. And I really always like to see it. When people of the community sit next to the table with a sandwich and cup of coffee, and they have a feeling of home. That's how it looked on the day of the opening. This is the picture I like most. It is a city facility financed by public money, but for me, it conveys a feeling of home. You asked as to the history and why we had to establish the house, and I think I answered why we had to open this house or home, and now what we are doing. It's called Communities House for Pride and Tolerance. It talks about many communities in plural. We do not have one gay community. Don't know. A community has to be so much more than gay parades and awareness raising. It's a group of people with common values who fight a common struggle, and they want to advance their beliefs. In order to do so, we said we do not talk about one community, but about communities, about all the letters we have. And we give space to all of them and a voice to all of them. Look at our logo. It has more than 6 colors because we wanted to emphasize that within each and every community we are diverse, and every community has to be linked to the others. Together we form something which is bigger than the sum total of the number of members. And we took 6 core topics which help us implement our vision. We want to be an independent, strong, and meaningful queer community, meaningful for us and for the city. It's important to us. We do not want to be a bubble within our city. We want to be a substantial power within our city, part of our city. I went to Google Translate in order to translate the topics. I hope it was successful. The core topics are community, culture, youngsters, awareness raising and education, healthy life and family and partnership or relationships. All these topics have one aim. They want to form a community. I know it's in Hebrew, but this just helps me to remember how to lead you through my presentation. We have different activities. For example, how do we develop a community? This is Kabbalah Shabbat, a queer greeting of Shabbat in the month of the Gay Parade in a Reform synagogue. This Reform synagogue conducts these Kabbalah Shabbat already 10 years, and we are now part of it. And one of our first programs was a Friday night dinner, not a religious one, but a community and social one. It was not supposed to be a happening because when you come at home to your family and eat, there's no event, but you come home to your family. And this is, since 4 years, has become a tradition until the corona. And we opened these doors in the back, and 60 people, first Friday of the month, from 18 till 75 people come with their pots and pans or with a bottle of Coke if they didn't have money to cook. And once a month, they sit together as a family. And concerning this person, I know for him it is the first and only Friday night dinner with the community, because many of our members are very lonely. It's a social event to the right. It's a reading. There's Dirk, who's reading the story. He reads a German book from the 90s. I love it. The Princess in the Bag. And you see 15, 20 kids come from queer families, and all the rest are kids from the neighborhood. And they sit together. There was no difference between them, no separation. They all were part of a meeting which dealt with gender, power relations, feminism, and I think it was an amazing event. Another event, I talked about the core issues. This is education and awareness rising, the Day of Understanding, or it is the International Day of Queerphobia. 300 students from all kinds of schools sit in circles and think how they could change the society in order to make it a more tolerant society. And we always do it in a different school, every year in a different school. We do it already for 4 years together with our youngsters. Other pictures from our house. And I told you we are very feminine, and what we did most were lots of poetry readings, because people told me lesbians love poetry readings. So I must have a lesbian within me. This is an amazing event. Queer, well-known poets came, and they all read together from their poems. And this is the young organization. Before our center was opened, we had 2 groups, young groups in Haifa. Today we have 8. 150 members. It's in itself already a youth center with Arabs, Muslims, Christian, Druze, separate movements, trans movements, and religious young movements. This is very special, and there's an immense need for those groups. I tried to show how we came about as a home which wants to support feminist values, we take into consideration equal representation between women and men. We emphasize that we have to be responsible and support those who have less power, who are less heard. And in Israel, at least, 80% of the gay centers are headed by men. I nearly apologize for being a man, but as long as I am heading the center, I think I will stay a man. But for us, it's very important to make that connection, because as long as you, as a woman, is considered to be less as a man, and you're allowed to hit a woman, you can also hit a trans or a gay person or kill them. And as long as a woman is an object and you can force two women to kiss, as happened in London a few years ago, so the feminist discourse and the discourse on power relationships and gender is something which we support, and all our the students we meet and all the professionals we work with consider these aspects. And something else which I forgot, we have a clinic for HIV tests. We work together with the nationwide AIDS organization, and we have a clinic for therapy with a social worker. And for students, we deal with rights, help for people in dire straits, and we give help. People have to pay for it up to a certain amount. We try to be fair, and people also undergo qualifications by the community. We do that all with organizations. We have a group for people, for rainbow families. It's a different organizations. We help that group. And we have an educational program for schools and in different other frameworks in order to help various organizations to be queer-friendly. I hope I have covered most of our activities. I pass the microphone back to you, Vanessa. It's amazing, unbelievable, the beautiful work you do and how you grew. The latitude of your work, and that you do not differentiate just for your community, but that you work together with the community of the city. This impresses me the most, because I ask myself, how did you succeed to do so? How did this originate? How did this grow? What support did you get from the city? You definitely needed it, I assume. Our funds. First of all, we got money. The building belongs to the city. The refurbishment was all done by the city, and I'm also paid. I'm an employee of the city. We have our annual budget, which is very, very small, but it enables us to do our basic activities. We believe, and I said it just now, we believe in cooperation, in partnerships. And all the lectures I give stress that element. And I think this is a picture I'm most proud of. This one. The community center is one organization, but everything you see here, all the icons, are different organizations we work with. There's a sentence if you want to run fast, just run alone. But if you want to reach far, run together. And I think this is part of the answer to your question, Vanessa, because much of what we do today are cooperations, deep and sustainable, long-lasting cooperations with all the organizations you see here. We are just one little link, but IGI is responsible for youth work. They have experience for tens of years. Tehillah works with rainbow families on a voluntary base. Roshen is a nationwide organization which does awareness work in the schools. And I told you about the AIDS organization. They pay for the test. 3 youngsters, volunteers who work on the history project, the center Isha Isha, from women to women, and they are our partners. Do not give money, but they help us to give an answer to trans women to develop their projects, and here the Arab communities. And on the other side, other half of the picture, these are non-queer organizations from Haifa, schools, for example, the city itself. We are partnering with different departments in the city. We work together on advancing certain issues. And this Imperia we have in social work, we help people. We would not be able to do so if the nationwide Gay and Lesbian Association, Aguda, would not have helped us. And we got certain funds from the state for a social worker who works with the queer community and with the help of students who do their internship. We work together with the university, and we work with lots of volunteers. But there's a catch to it, because as a citizen, you do not want to volunteer for a city you pay for, taxes for. But we need this help because our funds are limited. And that's the present situation. We have understood this, and today we build additional volunteer groups which implement certain projects with no funds. And I think what we needed, and the most important thing which helped us grow, was the recognition by the city. The moment the city said the gay community is important to us, they get a home, a center, that opened the doors. And in the first years, we had the feeling that it was not only money, but we had to take upon ourselves responsibility, and we needed partners and allies, and that is the secret of our rapid growth. It's really amazing. Thank you for your insights and experiences which you share with us, because I agree, it's much more than funds. There has to be also shared values and something people are interested in. And I really feel that today's event is such an event. Arnon, we heard a lot about your history, how the center grew, how the center was established. What are your plans? How do you want to continue as to the future in the community's house? What are your plans? Okay, the future. The biggest challenge today is to have multicultural programs. If I think of the many communities which need service, which need an answer, and also the significance of developing an Arab community, queer community. Once people are activists, they are also political, and the relationships between Jews and Arabs are complex in Israel. And sometimes we have also problems within the community because Arab queers identify as Palestinians, and they're not interested in cooperating with us because we are the occupiers. This struggle also comes into our house, and in 2020 there was the first Arab queer demonstration in Haifa. It followed an attempted murder of an Arab queer child. It was very moving that this happened in Haifa. Haifa is considered the Tel Aviv of the Arab queer community because they are safe in Haifa. One of the challenges is the multicultural work to raise funds, to be more visible, and many of the queer members do not yet know us, though for 5 years we are actively working on it. And one of the challenge basically for all the world is how to overcome the corona pandemic, which affects all, but most of all vulnerable groups. There's a misconception as to the gay queer community because in media they present the successful ones, the actors, singers, gays and lesbians most of the time, but they do not think of the others. A substantial part of the community is are people who fight for their existence, so especially also the trans community or the senior members or queer youngsters which do not integrate into society. And if with the future is, we do not know what the future brings, and I think it will be a huge challenge, especially in social matters and basic things of life. For many of the queer community, we see it at least today, they lack it. And the question is how we present ourselves as a sparkling, happy community or as a needy community. This is a question we are considering. We are neither nor, and I think we also have to say it out loud. We do not have to be embarrassed, especially in New York, the queer community. 90% they are dealing with social matters, with vulnerable groups, and we as a group, we have to be careful not to be part of social affairs, of welfare, because that is not very popular. And secondly, the topic of power relations, politics, how we keep the balance between the communities is very important. It's a process within the city of Haifa, and we have to take care that also the career gay feels that we are a home for him. And next to him is the trans woman who needs our help in order to pay the rent. We have to be relevant for both. And I think this is a huge challenge. And how we can provide an answer for deprived groups. Due to Corona, we mainly deal with these topics. And as to the future, maybe a little bit more optimistic, we want to have a cultural forum, Queer Haifa Forum, in order to have a local culture. We want to have also a forum of businessmen who are interested in funding us so that we can show our culture. And we want to make pubs and coffee shops safe places for people of our community. And the city and the services of the city have to become queer-friendly, safe for members of our community. We work with the Department of Welfare, Social Affairs, and Education together, so that I, as a citizen, can come to the Ministry of Education or Social Affairs, that I have a person there who I can approach with my identity and receive good service. This is not yet our reality. So far to the challenges and future plans.
Wir hatten ja schon mal dieses Format, dieses QZM Meets mit anderen Zentren, das war ja hier in Deutschland.
QZM Meets, we met already with 4 other German centers, but also in these meetings I paid attention that it is important that the topics which concern our community, that they are present in all walks of life, and that they get their space and they receive understanding. I mean, our specific issues. It's good you mentioned it. This is all, we share that experience here. You have 2 young members here, Asaf, and the second name is a little bit difficult. I don't see her. Yahav, and we wanted to hear them as well. If you want, please take the mic. Shalom, I'm Asaf, and next to me is Yahav. This year, we are part of Shnat Shirut. That's a year of voluntary service. We work with young people and to try to achieve social change. We do it within the framework of engl, which is an acronym for Israel Gay Youth. We left the houses of our parents, live in an apartment together with others, and we live everyday life together. In any respect, we have a common mission. We work with gay, queer youngsters and other youngsters. Yes, that's indeed a challenge. We learn how to live together with 5 other people. We are 24/7 together. We live together, we work together, we educate, and we feel we have a feeling of belonging to a nationwide organization of IGI, Iggy is providing the apartments, and we are part of this bigger movement. Before we decided to volunteer for a year, we were youngsters who used the services. I and many others share that experience, people who did not grow up in big cities. For me, this group was the only place where I could meet people like me. I mean, the group operated by Iggy. I could meet people like me, queer youngsters, and get information. We wanted to take part in this bigger mission and advance the values we believe in. And we took a year of our life and joined this organization as volunteers. We left the house of our parents, moved to a city we don't know, and we live in this apartment together with people we didn't know and the city we didn't know. In the morning, we volunteer in the school, and in the afternoon we work with young people in youth movements. And we try to advance our values. And this year we decided to live our values.
I'm sorry, Arnon, maybe you can tell them to try and speak.
The sound quality is really bad. Now you hear? Do you hear us? Okay. Yahav, you can hear Yahav, please. So why don't you talk? You hear just me, okay. Maybe you come closer to the microphone. Now, can you hear me now? Yes. The queer community, we want to take more responsibility for our members. We want to be more empathetic. We want to be active, not only to react. We want to be active members, that Arnon explained that before. And we want to have a more equal community, but not heteronormative. We do not want to have one pattern. We want a community which deals with differences. And we want a united big struggle, queer struggle, not many small struggles, because only this way we will have big change in society. And all those who are not part of the communities, we want to tear down borders. We want to deal with issues which are of importance for every man and woman. And that's why we decided to be active for our community. We want to change by ourselves society. And we need you also, all those who have experience, life experience, and know-how. We need those as means and do it together with you. But we do not want to receive things, but also give our input, and together we want to design our future. Are you finished? Have you finished? Okay. I'd like to add two things. I'll do it really briefly. They read it out, but that's who they are. And these two people are part of our culture team. It's a team of volunteers which gives 3 to 4 hours per week at least in order to create a queer culture for the city. And during the corona pandemic, they had Facebook and Zoom events, which were inspiring and amazing. They took upon themselves the responsibility in order to provide amazing lectures. And what Asaf and Yahav said, that is part of our basic perception. We do not want to be consumers, we want to be participants. We are bottom up. And we demand. I say always we are like a petri dish, like in a in a laboratory. We grow bacteria in order, and I have to give the best conditions in order to allow them to grow. And things which come from within the community are so much more successful as and the example of these two is a vivid example of how we are successful, Vanessa. Because many people who have a similar perception and feels the same responsibility as Yahav and Asaf help us, and I always say chapeau again and again.
Ja, ich bin auch beeindruckt und
True, I'm also impressed. Nice, Arnon, that you emphasized what you implement and do, because I wanted to ask Asaf what they do. Matter of fact, could you address that point? And I'd like to know what is the most precious for you in the community's house. What do you like best? Everyday life, we work mostly with young people, general youngsters in schools. We work with classes in youth centers, youth movements, and also within the organization with queer youngsters. We work with groups in movements, and the community's house works. Oh, there we are mostly active within the culture team. As Arnon said, and I was amazed by the non-hierarchical structure of the house, that my opinion, Yahav's opinion, and Arnon's opinion are equal. And not because of Arnon, who is heading the center, he's deciding. No, we sit together in a circle and decide together. There's not one person who decides, but the circle. And this is implemented. And thus I am responsible. I become responsible. And it shows me that, and it also motivates me and enables me, empowers me. To create culture is for me very meaningful and very important. It's important for creating a common denominator. Culture is very, very important. It is uniting. not just simply events, but emotional events. That kind of culture, create that kind of culture is very important to me.
Das ist ganz bewegend, was ihr sagt. Also ich freue mich auch, dass ihr heute Abend
This
hier
is
dabei
very
seid
moving,
und eure Stimmen
the
zu
things
hören.
you say. I'm very happy that you have joined us, and I'm very glad that we hear also your voices.
Genau, ich
It's
habe jetzt
good and important.
mal auf die Uhr geguckt und
I
genau,
just
und würde
looked
jetzt einfach
at
sagen, dass wir dass nur wir
the
miteinander
time,
sprechen,
and I
das
think
aufheben und
we
jetzt
should open
tatsächlich
up.
auch
Instead
gleich
of just
den Raum
us
öffnen,
talking,
sodass Fragen gestellt werden
we
können.
should
Auch von allen
open
anderen
up
Teilnehmenden hier
for
im Raum.
Q&As
Und das
and
kann
allow
so
all the
passieren, dass man
participants
einfach
to
den Namen in den Chat schreibt.
relate.
Wer was fragen oder sagen
You
möchte,
can just
schreibt
write
seinen
your
Namen in den Chat.
name
Und dann haben wir eine
into the
Reihenfolge
chat.
und
Just write your chat
können dann
down
einfach
and
praktisch
name it
freischalten,
down,
die Personen,
and
die
then we
sprechen
have
wollen.
a sequence, and we can
Diese eine
open the
Frage
mic
selbst
of
einfach
those
ausstellen. Und
who
ich hoffe,
want to
Asaf und
pose
Yahav,
the
ihr
questions, and
steht
you
auch
can
noch
do
zur
so by
Verfügung, dass
yourselves.
ihr Lust habt,
Asaf
euch
and
auch
Yahav, I
hier
hope you
ausgefragt werden
will
können.
stay with us and
Arnon, ist
also
das
answer
okay?
questions. Arnon, is that okay?
Ein kurzer Hinweis
Yes,
kam
with
davor von
pleasure,
unseren
of course.
Dolmetscherinnen, wenn jetzt Fragen aus dem Publikum kommen, dann bitte dran denken, dass
Our
eine ganze
interpreters
Pause, eine
asked to wait a little bit after the question till the interpretation
Also
has
erstmal
been
sage ich auch nochmal vielen Dank,
finished.
Arnon, Asaf und Yahav.
Thank you very much, Arnon,
Total
Asaf,
schön, einfach so
and
viel zu
Yahav.
hören,
Thank you,
das
first
alles
of
zu
all.
erfahren von euch.
It was really beautiful to learn so much from you.
Also, alle sind herzlich eingeladen. Wer jetzt da ist schon eine Frage.
You are invited. Okay, there's a question. First question.
Von Volker.
Ja, Shalom, guten Abend.
Volker.
Ich wüsste gerne nochmal über diesen
Shalom, good
Konflikt
evening.
Konflikt über den Zugang zu den unterschiedlichen
I'd like
Gruppen.
to know more about the conflict,
zu den
or
Gruppen
let's say
der
the
orthodoxen
approach to
Jugendlichen
different
im
groups.
jüdischen Bereich, der streng muslimischen Jugendlichen.
Orthodox
Ich glaube, in Haifa gibt es auch eine
youngsters
große
in the
Bereitschaft,
Jewish
Also ich habe
society,
das Gefühl, das ist Thema.
Arabs, Christians,
Das
Baha'i.
ist auch bei uns Thema.
I thought that was a topic. And it's also an issue in our migration society in Germany. And I think it is very difficult to get access to Turkish immigrant communities. How do you manage to do so? To combine the gay community with the colorful, diverse community of the city of Haifa. 95% are tough, hard work, and 5% is luck. And what is determining the success is luck. Because the question you asked, I cannot head a group of Arab queers. I'm not an Arab, and I'm not a queer Arab. And the challenge is to find partners who could do so and who want to do it together with us. And that's why I stressed luck. 4 years we tried to have contacts to the Arab queer communities. There was a group of Arab lesbian women who needed help. In Israel, there are 2 Palestinian queer organizations who do not cooperate with us. And they are not enough. At least that's what we heard from Arab members. And we built a leadership program for queer Palestinians together with the university. Half a year we worked on it, but we did not manage to get new members. Nobody wanted to be part of that group. But this year, a student came, a lesbian Arab woman came to us who is living in the neighborhood, and everybody knows her. And within half a year, around this woman, on a personal level, formed a group of young Arabs who ask for help, and they come to us. We have an additional Facebook page which is has the heading "Please Disturb the queer community of Haifa," because in Israel you usually tell people do not disturb. You tell your neighbors, please do not disturb, but this page says, please come and disturb. Ask, what do you need? And this works within a neighborhood. We have somebody in the city who works for this neighborhood, and in the last months it's moving. We had 15 Arab queer members who wanted to be part of that group. Well, that is a sign that we do something right, and very soon we will have to publish all our publications in Arab and Hebrew, because that would be a declaration of intent, and that's my task, to open the doors. And the religious group is not led by us. There's a group of gay religious people who work with this group. We just give them a backing. We support them, because everything what we did, whenever we tried to do something for somebody, we had limited success. We have to take a group and empower people, and people from within the different communities. This is connected to trust and to quiet policies and politics. We have to be active in the background, in the backdrop. We have to give up our logo and our publications and let others be on the stage. People who, so that they are identified with that person and not with me, with the House of Communities and the City Hall. I hope I answered your question.
Ich lade noch mal ein, alle wirklich die Fragen zu stellen. Ich finde das super, dass
I'll ask you again. Please pose your question. It's really nice that Arnon, Asaf and Yahav are here with us tonight. And you can also ask ask questions on different issues, how the center came into being. And we don't have to relate to the things we just talked about. This is your opportunity to pose questions. Just dare to ask. Vanessa, I think you don't see it, but Sören wants to pose a question. I'm sorry. Good evening. Thank you for this interesting, beautiful event tonight. I'm very happy about it. A short question. Arnon, you just said that the Queer Center do lots of social work, that you work with vulnerable and socially deprived people. And I can imagine there are also emergency cases due to physical violence in emergency situations when young people still live at home. Do you have the opportunity as a center to help? Can you provide housing? People who are in need, can they stay overnight, or can you transfer them to other structures, other organizations in Haifa? You touch an important and very painful topic. We do it. We do it often. But often we are very limited. We are a center, a community center. We are not a center where people can stay overnight. There are 3 centers, emergency centers for people where people can stay overnight, but they're all in the area of Tel Aviv. Nationwide, we sit together with the Ministry of Social Affairs. They want to issue a tender for such a center in Haifa. We have to clarify if it's for youngsters or other people, but we definitely know that it will cater to Jews and Arabs. It will be in Arabic and Hebrew bilingual because this need is a critical one. I have heard many times the stories when the police at night had to take a trans kid, a Druze kid, and the family wants to pick them up from the police station. But if we had not come in time, this kid would be dead. And the police was amazing. They contacted us and the ministry or the Department of Social Affairs. They paid for the taxi in order to smuggle the kid into a different city. And we deal also with lots of refugees who flee from the West Bank, from Palestine, and come to Haifa because word has spread, because they know in Haifa we take care of them. We are a safe space for them. We take care of refugees. In average, we have 5 to 7 refugees we take care of at a given point of time. And sometimes we do things which not exactly by the book. And we encourage our members to raise funds for people who are in need. And we help them so that they do not have to be on the street. We cannot do it from one moment to another to raise these funds. But private people can do so. And a month ago, we raised 4,000 shekels, which equals to 1,000 euro, in order to help 3 Palestinian Arabs, refugees, so that they do not have to stay on the street or work as prostitutes. And we asked our Arab members to raise funds, and they did so within 48 hours. This is heartwarming because we see that people feel responsible for one another. They are there for one another. And we also work a lot in help and to help people to get their rights, the payment by the Social Security, to integrate into work life. And people who do not have housing, we have a small WhatsApp group where we can ask people, and we first of all meet the people who are in need of housing, and we tell them we met them, they seem to be all right, do you want to house them? And we have already had stories where people 3 to 4 months moved from one house or to the other of the members of our community until they had enough money saved to pay for rent. We have internal networks of members who help people and help them also find work. Many things is networking, social networking, so that we can help one another where the city cannot help.
Jetzt David Linse hat eine Frage.
David Linze has a question. Yes, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for this beautiful event and the impressive lectures. I was happy at least to see the Lord Mayor on a picture, Yonah Yahav. He often visited Mannheim. He came and visited us with his wife. I have a more political question, if I may, to Arnon. I'm reading the newsletter of the Israeli embassy here in Germany and also other publications, official political publications, and it fascinates me to see that the Israeli government and the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs always emphasizes that Israel as a state takes a special stance, that its policy towards the gay community is important to the state. And I read it, and I think it was also in the big German boulevard press last week, that the Israeli state will fund with 2.5 million euro the LSBTI communities and those centers. And my question is if you share that position, that offered position, does that reflect everyday life, the everyday life of the community center in Haifa? I do not hear the translation. I just hear the funding I heard. That was the last I heard. I heard till 2 million or 2.5 million to the gay community. That was the last I heard.
Im deutschen Kanal gerade noch keine Übersetzung hören.
Wir müssen den Kanal wechseln.
There's also no translation in the German channel. You have to change your channel. Go to the German channel. I could answer the first part,
Ich sehe sie gar nicht mehr. Es ist wahrscheinlich rausgeflogen.
I think one of the interpreters has been kicked out. Okay, I'll answer. I heard part of the question until the state provides 2.5 million euro. I will answer, and maybe later on you can ask the rest of your question. It's a political question, indeed. And the answer is like always, very complex. As long as the state of Israel does not declare conversion therapies as illegal, I do not have the feeling that the state lets me live in a safe space and is protecting me. These conversion therapies are conducted by Orthodox in order to change the sexual identity. That was the explanation by the interpreter. Can I continue? As long as the state doesn't do anything to declare therapies like this as illegal due to politics, religious politics. I do not have the feeling that the state indeed takes care of me as a queer. These €2.5 million, this is indeed happening, and this is a fairy tale story. In a very complex political year for Israel, members of the community, somebody who is also a member of the parliament, he managed to get these funds for the queer community. And he did that in an amazing scheme. He united some of the political forces, not the big ones, the small. And they managed to allocate this money to the organizations and the communities. This money is designated to services to the communities. Asaf and Yahav, I hope there are no other Israelis present, because I will tell you something which I'm not supposed to say. But until today, 30 cities applied for these funds, part of these funds. It's a tender for municipalities. And 30 municipalities want to open these queer centers. It's unbelievable. This will, it's a game changer. And while I talk to you, I have goose pimples. It seems like unbelievable. 30 community cities all over Israel want to have a special project for 2021 for the gay communities, queer communities. And nobody imagined such an impact, and this tender has not ended. Maybe there will be more. We receive funds. We will get 500,000 shekels. That equals, or this is twice, nearly twice our present budget. And with the help of these funds, we will have a special program for the trans community, for the Arab community, and for the volunteer program and an educational program, the development of our archive, orphan archive, and work on the historical project. Many, many good things will be done with the help of these funds, but unfortunately it's still just a drop in the ocean.
Arnon, darf ich noch mal kurz nachfragen? Ich habe es nicht ganz verstanden.
Arnon, I'd like to clarify. I did not quite get it. These 30 municipalities said they need a center? Or is it implemented? 30 cities take part in the tender. They want to open queer centers. There are 4 at the moment in Israel.
Katrin, du möchtest auch was fragen oder sagen?
Katrin, you wanted to ask a question? With pleasure. Thank you for all the information. We heard lots of things about the youth work, and it's impressive, and I think it's an important aspect, and I'm happy that Asaf and Yahav have joined us. It's beautiful. But before that, you mentioned somebody who was 75, the eldest person, which takes part in your Friday night dinners. Do you have programs or projects for the senior members, the housing projects or other projects specially catered to that group? Good question. I discovered that men are not really great in creating social groups or forming groups. In Israel, there are 2 senior groups for women, but none for men. There's one in Tel Aviv for a few years, and in Haifa, there's a private person. He must be around 60, and he has 5 years a group of senior guys. He invites them to his house. But one of the first things I did was day for the Department of Senior Citizens, because I wanted to raise awareness for gay people, and we got funds for a senior elderly club for the elderly of the queer community, but I didn't find these people. They mostly do not come to us, and the apps, or we have no way to approach these people, to find them, to invite them, and even those who have outed themselves, but most of them, of course, have not outed themselves, especially if they live in the periphery, and you know it. But until 1987, homosexuality was a criminal offense, and you could get imprisonment in Israel. Could be imprisoned for being a homosexual. That's important, and I hope this year we will have the money to launch that project. We work with the Department for Services for Senior Citizens. We have worked on a questionnaire which we want to present to the elderly. For senior women, we have 2 groups, and there will be new ones for men and the older trans community. We don't have these groups. The trans community has one group, but not especially for seniors, and for older men who love women, we don't have this group because we cannot find them. If we find them, we will launch that program.
Vielen Dank.
Arnon?
Thank you. Arnon? Oh, Sören has a question. Okay, I'll ask my question first, okay? I understood that the community's house is not exclusively for the LGBTI plus community, but it's a place, it's a home for all communities where people come together and where you can live your identities. And that's where it is so impressive, and I like it. And I said it already in our preliminary talks, that you do not exclude the others who are part of the city, but it's something where things can come together, and I really like it, and that's what we need. We have a saying. So far, no straight has been harmed at our events. And that's important, because the pictures I showed you from the Friday dinner, these people are not necessarily from the community. These are neighbors. And before Corona, we have every 2 weeks board games. And there are lots of straight people who come and play. The storytelling reading event, 2/3 were people, the straight community. That's important, as once we interlink, the real change happens. When the broad society comes to us and sees us as an ally and friend, we have achieved a lot. And 2 years ago, during the gay parade, we had for the first time, well, let's put it that way. Every year we have a representative of the IGI organization. For young people, they speak in front of the parade. And 2 years ago, we had a straight schoolgirl who talked. She was an ally. And she talked about her responsibility and about the importance to be part of the queer struggle. And for me, it is part of the approach which we have to advance. We are not a bubble. We are part and parcel of the city. We work for us, but also with others. And Hadar, that's the name of the neighborhood we are situated in. That's a special neighborhood in terms of Israel, all Israel. In this neighborhood live 8 independent communities. We have 2 urban kibbutzim, hundreds of people who live together as a group in order to contribute to society. They do amazing things. This neighborhood lives togetherness, cooperation. And the Facebook page I mentioned, Please Disturb, that started in this neighborhood. There are 10,000 members, and you see posts like, I'm stuck here with the laundry machine on the sidewalk. Can somebody help me lift it up? Or does somebody have a screwdriver? These are questions posed in front of 10,000 people, and they get their answers. Or questions or posts, I have food, plenty of food, I don't want to throw it out. Who needs food? Who wants food? And to be a community center working in such a neighborhood, that demands from us to be part of, instead of being a bubble, a separated bubble. And I love it, I like it, because we work more properly and more deeply. I hope I answered your question.
Ja, vielen Dank.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Genau, mir ist jetzt nämlich auch nochmal eingefallen dazu, Arnon, auch in einem der anderen QZM-Meets, was wir hatten mit einem Zentrum in
Arnon, we had a meeting, QZM meeting with a center in Germany. I can't remember which center it was, but they also said that they opened up to the neighborhood. They invite the surroundings. They have parties with the neighborhood, and that's where things happen. They open up. Johanna asked a question in the chat. Johanna, has your question been answered? Sören is asking.
Ich hätte auch der Johanna jetzt den Vortritt gelassen, aber eine kurze Frage an euch 3, und zwar mit Blick auf die Zukunft.
Short question to all 3 of you.
Asaf und Yahav.
Let's look into the future. Asaf and Yahav. Can you imagine that young people from your community are interested to meet other young people from Mannheim? Do you think, might they be interested in an exchange, like a student exchange, a school exchange? And to Arnon, maybe, can you imagine that your city would support such a thing, or maybe enterprises? Israel has a lot of queer tourism. Maybe there are corporations who would sponsor such exchange, or are they interested in parties only and not focused on exchange and tourism? Asaf and Yahav, to you once again. Do you think it is meaningful to you if your city carries the title of Rainbow Cities, works together in a network, or is it just a label and less meaningful? Thank you. Asaf and Yahav, you can answer. We are not sure that we understood the question. Do you believe that queer people from Haifa, your age, would like to take part in a delegation and meet young people from Mannheim? Or what do you think about Haifa being part of a network of international cities who believe, who support queer programs? I think, I don't know. I cannot talk on behalf of the whole community. I talk about myself and those I know, and I think that the connections to Mannheim, that the community, or let's say I would really want these connections, and I would be happy to be part of a delegation like this. I think it's important, and I believe it would be really interested. I took part in a school exchange to Germany, and I know how we came really closer, and this without the common denominator of being part of the same community, which would be on top of it. As to the Rainbow Cities, I think it's more than a title. And this could be meaningful if it's not only on the paper, if it is translated or transformed to people-to-people relationships. You have to switch your mic off. Sören, you ask challenging questions. I think Haifa in general. Until this year, we were not busy with fundraising. The funds we had allowed us only to deal with burning issues, and part of my time as head of the communities, I had to help people or trans people so that they do not end up on the street. As we were more in the survival, not in the developing mode. This year it's very different. And this is not only due to government funding, because it's also due to the students we have and the many volunteers. Inter, for example, which is an international corporation. They have a group, a gay queer group, and 2 weeks ago they sponsored us with 8 laptops for all the new employees we will have, or people who volunteer for us, and I assume that there will be many more corporations who would be happy to foster programs or provide funds for the queer community. As to exchange and funds for those kind of programs, we have a new city council, we have a new mayor and a whole new team. They are less than 2.5 years in office, and this is still very delicate policy. And I assume that the topic of gay community, queer community, needs more stability in order to function. But the mayor, she is a PhD in urban planning, and she believes in creative cities. And one of the success parameters are gay communities. But until we have reached the point that we can get funds, city funds for the development of gay tourism, it will take some time. Because previously, or at the time, for the time being, it is not one of the preferences. But we have all the support. The only funds which have not been cut in the last 2 years are the funds of the queer community. This is an attempt to preserve the framework, but we have not reached the stage where the City Hall develops queer tourism. I hope that will happen soon. But queer tourism is today not Haifa, it's Tel Aviv, unfortunately.
Vielen Dank, Arnon. Ich habe jetzt im Chat, ich weiß nicht, die
Thank you,
Johanna,
Arnon.
die Frage nochmal, ob wir die jetzt nochmal aufgreifen sollen.
Johanna, should we take up your question again?
Okay. Und dann wollte ich fragen, würde ich jetzt sagen, mir ist nochmal,
Okay.
ich würde gern mit einem Zitat schließen von Arnon, das er in einem unserer
I would
Vorgespräche
like to end with a
gesagt hat.
quote by Arnon, which he said in one of
Das war mir
our
irgendwie bedeutsam.
preparatory talks.
Und er hat
This
das
was
so
of
ausgedrückt,
importance
er
to
hat
me, what he
gesagt,
said.
Interaction,
He said the
awareness,
following:
care for each other,
interaction,
wichtig to
awareness,
build this
caring
unit.
for one another.
That is the difference between
This
the pool of
is
people
important in order
and the
to
community.
form a human
Ja,
net.
mir war-
That's the difference
das hat
between
mich sehr
people and
beeindruckt.
a
Ich hab das auf Englisch
community.
gesagt. Ich weiß, ich hoffe, es gibt keine Probleme beim
That impressed
Übersetzen.
me. I
das
said
war
it
mir
in
irgendwie
English.
sehr
I hope
bedeutsam.
that's okay in terms of
Genau, und ich finde
interpreting.
in
That
dem
was
Sinne
very meaningful
heute Abend,
to
wir
me.
hatten viel Interaction, wir hatten auch Awareness.
We had lots of
und,
interaction
care for
tonight.
each other.
Awareness was also part of the event. We cared for one another. And I was very happy to be part of this event. I'm grateful for things we heard today, and I'm also thankful for the exchange. It's something wonderful.
Müssen wir langsam zum Ende kommen.
Unfortunately, we have to end. I thank, on behalf of the QZM, the various departments of the cities, also thank you to the mayor of the city of Mannheim. Thank you to the members of the QZM. Thank you to the members of the Community Center in Haifa, to Arnon, and thank you to the interpreters, and you did a great job. And in the end, want to say that this was a great event, and I hope we can repeat international events, maybe with queer centers of other partnership, Twin Cities of the city of Mannheim, and that we can invite all our international acquaintances to join in. Thank you once again. Thank you that you listened to us, that you participated, and I hope that it was enriching and interesting to all of you. I and all the others of the Queer Center, we have gained a lot of insight for our future work. Have a beautiful Thursday evening. We'll put the video online on Facebook. So you can re-watch it or watch it for those who joined in later. So see you later. Thank you. Goodbye.
Shalom.
Wow.